All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's start that conversation we're calling it State of the Nation. This is where we talk about all matters, politics, and everything in between there. My guest in studio, let me start from my immediate left, Joshua Kipto, Nandi County Assembly Speaker. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much.
Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel and also aspirant for Kisumu Senate. Thank you so much for making time. Franklin Mkwanja, Executive Director, CMD, will be joining us online also in just a bit to give us his views on this. Let's start off with the latest issue here, gentlemen. It's a new opinion poll. New poll claims Raila in 4-point lead against Ruto. New Infotrak poll suggests that if elections were held today, Azimio la Umoja Raila Odinga would lead in 20 counties and garner approximately 9.3 million votes, while Kenya Kwanza's William Ruto would lead in 16 counties and garner about 8.4 million votes. Prof, I'll start with you because you've always been consistently talking about these polls. Are they heading where you thought they would be going to?
Trevor, thank you very much for that question. I think the 4-point lead is exactly what I predicted some 4 weeks ago. And I predicted that we would have a 4-point lead, and I think it would stretch it to about 5–6%. Raila will obviously get over 10 million votes in the end, and this is the trend that I can see firming up. The opinion polls by Infotrak, in my view, are just on point. They reflect what is on the ground. And I think what is on the ground is reflected by the fact that once Senior Counsel Honorable Martha Karua joined the Raila team as Deputy President, the figures started going up. And I think the figures started going up because a lot, and I think this is the truth, that there's a tilt in the Mount Kenyan vote basket. And that tilt has seen William Ruto and his team, the Deputy President and his Deputy Gachagua, work very, very hard. You've seen Gachagua has now been confined to Mount Kenya to try and do the vote in Nyeri. Now, if you've been following the rallies keenly, and I've attended a couple of them, you have seen what the Azimio team did in Narok, wiping a fair share of what was Kenya Kwanza's vote basket. Western Kenya, momentous, huge, a clear indication that the Mudavadi team will not garner the 70% that they thought they would garner for Western Kenya. Because clearly that is an Azimio zone. Look at the cost. Tables have turned. That was a traditional Azimio ODM zone. It has shown you that the entry of Martha Karua has also created a huge tilt in the Mount Kenya region. And that huge vote basket of 5.4 million, right from the Rift Valley, Nakuru was huge as well. I'll tell you, Trevor, that Raila will garner over 10 million votes in the end. The stretch is going to go to over 7%.
Okay.
By the time of election.
Okay. Kipto, what do you make of this opinion poll?
Thank you very much. I think if you hear Prof, you would think there'll be no contest. But I would beg to differ with my senior and who happened to be my teacher. One, opinion polls are generally more or less an attempt to gauge the mood and basically the trend. And what concern me about the opinion poll is, if you are to believe the opinion poll, I think the focus should be on the undecided, which is significant. If you're talking about 20%, that's a huge number. If you talk about the trends between the two leading coalitions, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, I don't think much has shifted. Not so much has shifted when it comes to the choice of the running mates, because the choice of the running mate for Azimio, this being Martha Karua, and the choice of running mate for Kenya Kwanza being Rigathi Gachagua, you could see that that was a targeted move towards Mount Kenya. So the end result would be, how much has Mount Kenya shifted because of that? In my view, I don't think much has shifted when it comes to the Mount Kenya vote vis-a-vis the two coalitions.
Yeah.
And seeing Kenya Kwanza intensifying campaigns in central Kenya was basically to push back, to try to forestall any possible bump that would have arisen from the choice of Martha Karua. Because in any case, Mount Kenya region has been a bastion for Kenya Kwanza coalition. And when you have have an area as your political stronghold, it is no-brainer for such a coalition to go out of its way to protect its staff. And there was that feeling possibly because the Azimio people in Peking, Martha Karua, had two, I think they had two objectives, either to try create a wave or some positive vibe from using the gender card, at the same time try to make it appear as if Mount Kenya is being given a consideration. So when you see an uptake of activities by Kenya Kwanza, it's basically to push back. Number two, it is also to create that more or less debate between the two coalitions who has the interests of Mount Kenya at heart. And that is why you see it is obvious for Rigathi Gachagua to be the one on the forefront. The choice of Rigathi Gachagua was basically to ring fence, especially Central Kenya.
Okay.
And that is one I can be able to see.
All right.
Then number two, I can be able to say that the only thing I can be able to say, I agree that it has become competitive, and that is normal with politics, not just presidential, even MCA, Senate, governorship. This is what happens. Politics is an emotional game. And as we head towards the election, one, I think there is hardening of decision making.
Yeah.
I suspect up to 70% or 65 to 70% of Kenyans have already made their mind. So that where you have your vote, I'll give for example, if you talk about Kenya Kwanza, Rift Valley and Mount Kenya remains stronghold for Kenya Kwanza. And the hardening of the decision of the residents of those areas to support Kenya Kwanza is intact. The same way we would give Azimio, for example, Nyanza. However, something unique this time, and which even if you were to go with the opinion poll, which is disputable, for example, something interesting is that most of the strongholds for 2017 are increasingly turning out to be battlegrounds. Western Kenya is no longer an absolute bastion of Azimio as it was in 2013 and 2017. Let me use the same data. Bungoma, which is the second biggest county in Western Kenya, is being touted as a swing. Yet in 2017, Raila, I think, got up to 70% of that, but it's now being put into play. Mudavadi comes from Vihiga. Basically, if you're to use 2013 figure, then they'll have to split or even take more. So that means Western will be competitive. Cost, especially Kwale, and that has been captured with the data. What Jubilee got in 2017 vis-a-vis what Kenya Kwanza is being touted to have, you can see an uptick. So my consideration would be the next 2 months would be very critical.
Okay.
Either of the coalition's focus right now shifts towards the so-called battleground. Okay. And I wanted to use Narok. Narok is not a county that can be given to a coalition and say it is under lock and key of a coalition. It is a battleground. When you talk about the Maasai vote, Kajiado, Narok, those ones are on play. And remember, Narok has that uniqueness of being a cosmopolitan. That has to be put into consideration. So from my view, the race is now moving towards more or less the home stretch where the margins will be finer. Number two, whoever sells the agenda, and that has been my argument in this election season, this time a coalition is branded on the messaging. And that's why I look at Azimio when they are launching their manifesto. The main issue or the talking point 2-3 days down the line is on the issue of Mitumba. Why? The voter is now more keen on the agenda. By the time Kenya Kwanza will be putting in their manifesto, the talking point will be what is the selling point.
Okay, there's a point that we've forgotten, Trevor. I think it cannot be gainsaid that Azimio is now complete. Azimio is now complete. With the entry of the doubting Kalonzo Musyoka, the chief minister, clearly the coalition is complete. The lower eastern Kenya vote basket is 2 million. That's about 1.8 to 2 million votes. And you can imagine all that is now in one basket. There's no doubt that there will be a split and that the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka Senior Council is out there trying to push a rerun.
And yet research here shows it's almost a tie because Lower Eastern is 41% for Azimio and 32% for...
I'm clear that data, I think, was obtained just days before Kalonzo's entry. Because I don't think that... that the parties who are in Kenya Kwanza from Lower Eastern, in this case Governor Mutua, has a significant touch on the vote basket in Lower Eastern. I can tell you that the Lower Eastern vote, the Ukambani vote, which is, of course, in Lower Eastern and part of Coast, largely coast and you know, the Shimba Hills area and all that, will be in one basket, because Kibwana is in, Ngilu has ensured that the entire vote in Kitui will come to Azimio. So I'll tell you this, Trevor. This 9.4 million lead is on the lower side. The Azimio team with Raila and now Kalonzo and Martha Karua will continue to gain. And when we have this show in the next 3 weeks, I will assure you that Raila will be having a 10-point lead, a 10% lead over the Kwanza team, Kenya Kwanza team.
All right, let me bring
and clearly, this is the reality. We are seeing where we are going.
Okay.
The future is Azimio.
Okay, God willing, we'll still be here so that we see how the Infotrak polls go ahead. Mkwanja, let me bring in this conversation on the opinion poll. What do you make of it? Do these numbers make sense to you?
Yeah, good morning, Trevor, and thank you for... Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you quite well. Go ahead.
Thank you. I find quite this interesting because we know very well that the race for 2022 will be determined like any other on issues of ethnicity and the money that is being spent. Yes, we may agree that the choices of running mates and possibly the gender perspective is going to play out and the use of tech as well. But truth be told, there is still going to be voting largely along ethnic blocks. So whoever has coupled up a political coalition that attracts the interests of the various ethnic blocks is likely to win. But let me go to the science of polling. And if, Trevor, you bother to ask any politicians, including those ones in the studio, Professor Agenda and my brother, the Speaker of Nanti County, if you ask them if they would pay attention to the people's voices, almost every politician would say yes. And if you then asked whether polls are at least one tool through which wishes of the people can be discerned, you will find that a reluctant majority would probably say yes, that too. So these conundrums of public opinion polling, in my opinion, are enfolded in this hypothetical tale that people of all kinds, be it activists, be it ordinary citizens, be it politicians, would regularly cite polls, especially those that find them in the majority, but are deeply skeptical of polls when especially the opinion moves in the wrong direction. And sometimes these doubts are wrongly put on the pollsters and their methods. Questions that go in the direction do pollsters ask the right questions? Are they manipulating the wording of questions to get the responses they want? And you have also had, Trevor, questions of whom did they interview? Infotrak has told us 9,000 and such. So some of these doubts are wrapped up in a mistrust of the political parties. Some of the big consumers of this pollster data, Professor Agenda's party relied on opinion polls, for instance, to give nomination certificates. So I think this imaginary example also shows us that it matters greatly how the pollsters ask their questions, because you will really come to a scenario where sometimes respondents want to offer opinions on subjects about which they have not thought about, they have not thought much about, and possibly do not care. People sometimes answer pollster questions just to be polite, or because they figure out probably they ought to have an opinion. You see, then that would that be giving pollsters a lot of running room to do what politicians sometimes claim when the opinion polls are not favoring them, that they have manufactured the results? And these are the questions we're asking, but we know where we sit. The determinant of these elections, it still will remain largely ethnicity. And therefore the tribal coalitions really matter.
Okay.
I know the playing out of the running mates, and if they were to play out significantly and the gender aspect, and then Kenya Kwanza would be in trouble. But if you look at the ethnic perspective, I'm doubtful that we have reached to that demographic revolution level that young people are largely going to influence these elections. The registration of young people, the inconveniences are as a result of traveling around to cast their ballot. A lot of challenges for them. So I doubt that we will have a democratic shift that is revolutionary based on the demographic leaning. So that I would say in terms of the pecking order, ethnicity will still play out. The issue of money significantly again will play out because a lot of voters do not want there's a misnomer in our social contract. The level of civic responsibility and obligations is really wanting. People still don't want to have a conversation on what government should do and what government should not do. And I think those give politicians an upper hand, especially those ones that are money.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to move away from this conversation on the opinion poll and talk about the IBC. There's been anomalies that has been registered. But Kipto, you're talking about the issue of running mate not being a factor. But we see here Infotrak Chief Executive Officer Angela Mbitho said that the drop in DP's ratings could be attributed to his choice of running mate. In fact, the quote is, we see a fall in the ratings of Dr. William Ruto from 42% to 38% a few days after the naming of the running mate. The choices they made had an impact on the popularity of the candidate in some regions.
Now, my proposition to that was, when it comes to the choice of the running mate, the impact in this case has been Mount Kenya, because both the running mates come from Mount Kenya. One, the support for the deputy president in Mount Kenya has been more out of the love and affection they have for him as a candidate. It was not conditional per se. I don't think he's lost on that front. And someone's gain cannot be directly correlated with someone's loss. That Azimio can claim that their choice of running mate, Martha Karua, helps them. That may be true on their end, but it does not come as an opportunity cost or as a loss on the part of the deputy president. My thinking would be, when it comes to Mount Kenya, the significant amount of time the deputy president has been able to invest in the region, no candidate more than the deputy president has done campaigns in Mount Kenya for this election season for the last 2 years. So I am confident that if you are to place that into perspective, the support for the deputy president, in this case in Mount Kenya, stems from the fact of the relationship he has created. And that is why what Rigathi Gachagua is basically doing is basically to complement what foundation the deputy president had set. And unlike Azimio, which in this case, the people climbing the mountain or the people trying to gain some foothold who are on the back foot was Azimio. And that is why you see now the amount of energy they are putting now cannot even match a tenth of what the deputy president had done before. And I'm really confident that that has not been affected significantly. The only thing I said, it is normal for this period of time to have tightening of the race because the main thing about the voting patterns 2 months to the election is about that decision. There's one thing, a supporter supporting you. And I think, Prof, now that he's in an elective contest as the next Kisumu senator, there's that phenomena where you can get the support, but the support hardening to be an actual vote makes the difference. So that when Prof, for example, was vying towards the nomination, 2 weeks to the nomination is when now the support crystallized into actual support. That is why for him it ended up being like a coronation, so that as at the time he was facing the nomination, now he didn't have an opponent per se. So we can now boldly call him designate. So in this case, at this point we are at the national level, we are now the support crystallizing to actual decision to vote. I don't think the choice of running mate has significantly affected the deputy president, especially within Mount Kenya.
All right. Prof, let's now move on to a different conversation on the IBC register audit. And keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll sample out them in just a bit. Are you concerned when there's voter register anomalies? KPMG preliminary reports has shown that close to 1.1 million people register in the audit, in the register as a problem, because 260-something thousand are deceased, 481,000 have anomalies, a total of about 1.1 million.
Trevor, 1.1 million is a big number. It's a fairly big number. And of course, every 5 years, the IBC has an obligation, a legal obligation, to clean up the register so that you do not have an election where dead voters purport to vote or are reflected as alive. And of course, what that does is that you then end up with in a vote that then is not verifiable. Remember, Article 81 of the Constitution demands that every election must not only be accountable and transparent, but verifiable.
Yeah.
Those are minimum thresholds that the Constitution places on the IBC. Now, the 1.1 million vote count that includes 266 deceased and a number of transfers that were not done within time, for instance, or a number of voters that cannot be verified against details is a significant number. And that can affect a candidate, because remember the leads in 2017, 2013, you find the lead between the presidential candidates is hardly 1 million votes, and therefore that affects. And that is why the IEBC has seen it fit, one, to deal with two questions. One, of course, ensure the IEBC has asked everyone to undertake a voter verification. Voter verification is you enter your details so that you confirm whether your vote is reflected in your polling station where you will vote and your details are correct. That's number one.
Yeah.
And number two, the IEBC will today conduct a dry run to ensure that its machines and its equipment works. That is an important precursor to the electoral process, not only as a demonstration of competence and confidence, but also to place some level of leverage on the ordinary person so that they know that when they vote in 2022, 9th August, their vote shall count and they'll not turn up at the wrong polling station. I think for me of concern, Trevor, is the IEBC amendments to the regulations,
yeah.
The 2021 amendments that attempt to amend, for instance, Section 39,
yeah.
and that attempt to introduce regulations on voter transmission.
Okay, we'll come to that in just
Yes,
a second.
yes. I think that for me is perhaps more key.
Yeah.
So that we are able to seal all the the pre-2017 concerns as raised by the Supreme Court,
yeah.
but also to ensure that the verifiability of the vote is beyond reproach.
Okay.
That we know that when you're voting, or wherever you are as a voter, you are able to ensure that you take advantage of the kind of network that is there and that your vote shall count and transmitted as cast.
Okay.
For me, that is a bigger question.
Okay.
But let me just say this, that the dry run today by IBC, and this probably should have been done much earlier,
yeah.
will show us whether the equipment and the systems work or do not work.
Yeah.
And I think the exercise should not only be transparent, but should be participatory, and they should get an ordinary person to verify. You know, they should get sample people to test the equipment so that we know that the equipment by IBC will work for the benefit of the people of this country.
Okay, let me bring in Mkwanja on this. Mkwanja, just that admittance by IBC that there seems to be some voters whose details, credentials are not proper by the preliminary report, coming at a time when the Deputy President himself had also raised a concern. Does it give credence to what the Deputy President said, or does it build your confidence in IBC that they have admitted that we found out from the preliminary report that there's a problem with this register and we are fixing it?
Yeah, Trevor, let's not kid ourselves. The IBC job is a tough job. And too bad for us that we have made it, again, a bad job out of our mistrust, our trust deficits in institutions like IBC, therefore relying overly on technology. We also have put Chebukati and team in a very difficult situation where funding of IBC has come in a day late, $1 short, and also our very poor political culture where we break the very basic rules, and we would not have very little adherence to the code of conduct. Having mentioned that, I think if you listen to the Deputy President and the Honorable Raila, who are the leading candidates, make their submissions to IEBC, you would obviously deduce that there is a fear of the level of preparedness by the IEBC on this occasion. I think the difference is we have had an IEBC leadership that has been more engaging with the stakeholders than this one that has been very much closed. And there seems to be everyone, not other than themselves, to be quite clear of what is going on exactly and the level of preparedness. It astounds me that even the ones that the general public would think would be much more informed are also asked the same questions that the civic actors are asking. The integrity control, the using of the voter registration process as a means of preventing multiple voting and impersonation is key. The issue of publicly publishing voter register lists for transparency purposes is key. And this is the process that the IEBC has been going through for the last few months to ensure that the elections of 2022 have a credible register, because a credible voters register is a crucial step in the electoral process. We need to see how this process then prevents the inclusion of ineligible voters and the omission of eligible voters. And unfortunately, these two things are playing out, that there is the reports of omission of eligible voters, moving them around, and there is the incapacity so far to weed out the inclusion of ineligible voters. That is why the numbers have come out. And if you listen keenly to the gentleman, the head of the advisory team from KPMG, he was clear that if we see them standing next to IEBC on 17th, then things will be looking better. But what if we miss KPMG next to IEBC on 17th? Given the complexities of ascertaining the voter register and the way you have gone through resolving this issue in this country, I think we must be alert that there are concerns, that the processes by which the new register is being updated may undermine the purposes of ensuring that only those eligible to vote are included. And this will be not a good thing, because we are not innocent. The government executive is not innocent. The funding to IEBC got there very late. The composition of the team was quite late in the day, including the secretariat and the commission. But that, you should not, cry about spilled milk. The most important thing today is to ask IEBC that there must be an enhanced stakeholder engagement to ensure that these issues are brought out and conversed much earlier than shocking and increasing blood pressure for every other person.
All right, I'll come to you right after the break. I'll take a quick commercial break on this. But let's see what you're saying in terms of the last two topics that we're talking about right now. Let's bring that up before we take that quick break on feedback at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag daybreak. Let's bring that up so that we take that quick break and come back and continue with this discussion. We have Bobo Tieno saying we must move with speed to clear up anomalies rocking voter registration for Kenyans to have confidence in them, Let's see what else you're saying. Elias Ash says opinion polls are just okay, but for me, I think IEBC or the one contested the poll should focus on the undecided, since the figure is too large. We should be told that the regions where most of the undecided are from, and this will help us have knowledge on who may win. See what else you're saying here. James Karanja says the swing in Central will favor Raila. Gachagua was wrong. Bet and Kenya Karua has charisma that's untainted. My bet is a 50-50 in Mount Kenya. Rogers say I disagree with those opinion polls, because that 9,000 opinions can't be used to predict the opinion of over 12 million voters. It's funny. Actually, they can, scientifically speaking, but still, that's your view. Let's see what else is coming through in just a bit. Give us your views on every single topic that we're going to talk about at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag daybreak. We're still on the issue of the IEBC. Let's take a quick break and then come back and continue with that, because also on the front page of the Daily Nation, there's ghost of 2017 as MPs reject Chebukati laws, where does this leave IEBC? Are they back to the 2017 scenario where there's a possibility of anomalies as they also test the equipment today? We'll be back with that conversation in just a bit.